Tell us, what can I learn from your career? You can go back and change. So what can I learn from your career? And how will I be happy when I get there? You know.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Microbioz podcast. I'm your host Pallavi Dikshit, and I am delighted to have you join me as we explore to the ever-changing landscape of healthcare. This podcast is dedicated to shining a spotlight on the thought leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the industry. Today, we have an extraordinary guest with us, someone who truly embodies the spirit of leadership, innovation, and transformation in the pharmaceutical industry. Joining us is Raweesh Chaudhary sir, a seasoned professional with over 29 years of rich experience spanning medical affairs, product management, and commercial strategy across multiple countries and continents. Raweesh sir is a seasoned leader in medical strategy and currently guiding initiatives in cardiology at a renowned pharmaceutical company. With a wealth of experience spanning roles in digital transformation, brand strategy, and medical excellence, he has significantly contributed to the healthcare industry beyond his corporate responsibilities. He also shares his expertise as an adjunct faculty member, mentoring future pharmaceutical leaders, and actively engages in alumni initiatives to strengthen and professional networks. Raweesh sir, is an absolute privilege to have you here. Your experience and insights are sure to inspire our listeners. Thank you for joining, sir. How are you, sir?
Very good, and thank you for a rather generous introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and hopefully we can get into a little conversation around our industry as it's changing. And if I can bring in some pearls of wisdom over the years, things that I've learned, mistakes that I've made, things I would do differently, things I would not change, I'd be happy to talk about.
I'm so excited to have you here with us on our podcast because we have been talking to experts in pharmaceutical, biopharma, biotech, microbiology, and you have been an eminent leader in these industries all across. You have also been a teacher, professor, mentor, and a corporate leader. So I am so excited to talk to you about everything. Obviously, we won't be able to talk to you about everything per se, but we'll try to talk to you and gauge as much as we can. So let's get started with some of the few questions that I have in my mind. So let's talk about your insights into your professional journey from your early days in the pharmaceutical industry to your current leadership role in medical strategy.
Yeah, so I'll start off with saying that sometimes I'll take myself back to my days I was in BIT Master graduating, and at that time I had an idea, but looking back 25, 29, almost 30 years later, it's like looking at your career through a keyhole. Right, and I had these ideas about where I would end up and what I would do, and it was very, very different from how it really happened. So the thing that I would say is, at that point, I did not know that I would end up. I was working in India, and I did not know that I'd actually end up in US. I did not know the path that I would take to end up in US. I did not know the roles that I would end up along the way, do things along the way. So the one part that I would say is to continuously adjust, and readjust, and not have these really fixed ideas. And maybe we can talk about some roles that I was so fixated on that I missed other roles that came along the way. So in short, my career has been, after starting off, as a young pharmacist, I like to say here, in the US, pharmacy is a very specialized role. industry is just one of the options. But I like to say that I defected to the dark side, which is the pharmaceutical industry, in a lighter manner. But I had worked there for several years, but mostly on the commercials. So I started off with sales, and then got into product management, and then I immigrated to Canada. And one of the things as I teach young pharmacy students is to say, well, it's a hard experience to wipe your resume clean and start afresh in a new country. And, you can't carry your equity, you can't carry things that you had, relationships, start afresh. And one thing that helps is resilience and grit. And I think most immigrants will know that. It's resilience and grit. And then, your basic things start coming back. You're able to establish yourself. So some of those things help. So the company that I joined was the only company, a pharmaceutical company, big pharma company that I interviewed, and I worked there for the next 21 years. But you would across two countries, then initially in Canada and then in the US. And multiple roles. And then there was one role that I was just offered. They were creating these medical science liaison roles, and I was on the commercial side. And I just took that role because it looked like a great role. What I did not realize now, 15 years later, about 15 years later, I can say that one role, which was one job that I accepted within the company, completely changed the trajectory of my career into medical. So sometimes I look back at some of those things, and those are pivotal decisions. Now I'm really happy to be in medical, but at that point in time, I wasn't really thinking of almost different road, right? You come to the fork in the road. So where am I going with all this? Number one, I think having a plan is a good idea. Yeah. But I would say also staying in the moment and assessing what impact, our decisions might have. And number three, going back, if I had to look back, I'd say talking to people who've been there before, right? To say, well, tell us what can I learn from your career. You can't go back and change. So what can I learn from your career? And how will I be happy when I get there? So people, when they are in certain roles in different places, to say, is that what I really want to do? So talking to people who've been there is a good idea. So in short, if I had to summarize my almost 30 years career, 3 different countries, 2 different continents, major chunk in one company, but multiple roles in one company, and starting from sales to product management to medical affairs, field medical affairs to strategy director to, now as the medical lead for a product that we are about to launch. So lots of experience. And I'm glad that I did some of those roles early on in my career because I know how they work. So now when I as a strategy director and senior strategy director, I have to work with people, develop them, police the strategy and work around with them. It helps me that I've done those roles early on in my career. So in summation, my advice to people who are early career is to be resilient, be in the moment. Your skills carry. Sometimes your experience may or may not, your relationships may or may not. And ultimately, be true to yourself, what will make you happy. And by default, people find out if they have right opportunities, end up there. I'll stop there, and hopefully I kind of gave a broader answer to the question you were asking.
No, I think your experience has definitely shaped a lot of your journey, but in hindsight, your experience has also shaped a lot of students of yours uh, who you have taught or you have mentored in your classes. Uh, your experience might have influenced them to choose marketing, project management roles, or medical affairs role also. So from this point, I would like to discuss how do you effectively balance your academic responsibilities as an adjunct faculty member with your dynamic role in pharmaceutical sector as well, because you're doing it fantastically. You're switching one and two. How are you doing that?
Well, I think the way to look at it is at a certain point in time, some people. I mean, hopefully, a lot of us at the other end of our career want to give back, right? And it's how strongly you want to give back is what drives your motivation. So, sure, yeah, you know what I mean. My current role is very intense. It is extremely intense. We are about to launch a product. First time in the world, it'll be in the US, and you know, you have to partition your mind and get into those roles. But at the same time, I look back and say, oh, what was it that I did not have when I was in just graduating? And one of the things is I did not have somebody who had years of work experience that could see the mistakes that they did, could truly tell me the how to in a realistic way how to plan your career from my own industry. So some of those things. So that's what led me to teach. And reason why I did very little to do with to me it's not really a job. It's more because I want to give back to the students. I also feel that I kind of owe, you know, when you start off your career, people and companies hire you for your potential, right? I mean, because you have lots of potential, you have lots of years of working. Over the years, as you work, you use up your potential, but you gain experience. And so as you come closer to the second half of your career, you have a lot of experience, but you have less potential. And that starts decreasing. So if you see how companies will hire youngsters with bright potential, but then companies will look for experience and then they will hire people with experience. So there's a mix. So my simple logic is that I have lots of experience, lots of mistakes, lots of challenging situations in our pharmaceutical industry, which is actually not captured well in all the marketing books and all that. You will rarely find true pharma examples, right? There'll be a lot of examples from consumer industry and all that. So as I get to this stage of my career, I realize that people with potential, people who have been on this journey, people who can give back to students in real time, create real examples in classes, create real situations, and challenge these young minds on how would you handle. And even though it looks extremely theoretical in the class level, but I think one of my aims as I balance the teaching part is to say, well, some things may not make sense to you in a non-working environment now, but as you go, I hope you remember these examples. I hope you've been exposed enough so that when you face something like this in real life, you already are thinking on another dimension, which is not taught traditionally in your school, which is very academic in nature. So that the final line that I would say is, it's less about treating it as two separate jobs. It's more about just carving out some time to give back, right? And the biggest thing I can give back now is actually just the gyan of life, right? I mean, in my industry, right? I mean, here are the things, real life situations, here are the things you should not do, here are the things you should pay attention to. This is how the industry is moving, and I have seen lots of product launches, things that have failed, things that have succeeded, companies that have, so being able to provide that to young students is something I find satisfying, if you will.
That's an excellent way of thinking. I hope other people also take inspiration from your life and would like to give back to what they have come from. That is a good idea as well. But I would now want to focus back to your corporate responsibilities and talk more about it. So during your tenure in strategy and medical excellence roles, what key initiatives have you led that stood out as an impactful contribution? If you can point out to just a few examples, obviously there would be a lot, but to name a few.
Yeah, so where I'll start with is to say that, I've done a lot of different roles. When I've done a lot of different roles, that means what IT industry, and I'll mention IT, the influence of IT on our industry. The IT industry likes to call use cases, right? I mean, so what has happened is I have, over the period of time, I have deep understanding of a lot of business cases. And I'll go to some specific examples after this. So I have deep understanding of the industry, the jobs that I have done, and the ones that I have not done. But I as a senior director, I'm involved with shaping some of those roles. So I have deep understanding of pharmaceutical business processes. Okay, so now some of the initiatives it became apparent to me that there is a digital transformation going on. And lots of processes that we did in a certain way, which required more manual labor, and labor may not be the right term, but manual effort, is changing rapidly. And so several years ago, to give an example, I started working when I was, on trying to get insights. And I'll mention some other things. So simple thing as insight, and what an insight is, that in the industry that we work in is a knowledge industry, right? I mean, yes. Lots of science, lots of knowledge, and things change. So they change rapidly, and things are happening, lots of research. So the question is what I like to call a scientific artifact. Something happens, some trial comes out, something happens. We all know what the result is. But it is important for companies to understand how it is being perceived, right? And there's a lot, I mean, people have all kinds of opinions, but usually they are guided by a scientific artifact or a scientific event that happens. It could be a trial, it could be a product withdrawal, it could be some side effects coming in, it could be something. But there is widespread opinion of people that shapes how this drug or therapies are used, which is sometimes you have to counter misinformation, you have to make sure you stay true to science, and there's lots of things that are involved. So excuse me, so understanding the opinion in real time is very important, and that's an insight, deep understanding. Now that's the insight part. So what was the process? We have people within the organization who are constantly talking to experts as on the medical affairs side, on a scientific level. You are sitting in conferences, you're hearing people, there's some discussion, but the insights within the company was mostly done through what the medical science liaison would bring back. So you look at 300, 400, 500 pieces of insight, which the company would come in, and they are scientific insights. So there was a lot of weightage that was given to it. but you had small number of insights, right? 300, 400 given in a particular point in time by people who knew you worked for the company, so it was biased at source. And you have to be careful what you write, because these are all discoverable, and you're accountable for what you write. So there's, it's not such an easy thing, and it was modulated at source. So if I was talking to you, the insight you give me is you fully know who I am. So what was the transformation part? The transformation part was several years ago, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started looking at social media as a source of insight. And, so having these tools and digital tools which can scrub billions of tweets and remove all the garbage in your area, and you can write these algorithms and look at some of these insights. And now they are getting so better with AI and all that you can trend them, you can look at lots of different things. And so what used to be 300, 400 insights, suddenly you're looking 30, 40, 50,000 insights within that same 2, 3, 4 day period. Now, the 300 insights that we got from our own people they were accurate, but there was a huge error margin. Whereas when you have 30, 40,000 people saying something, you have a tighter confidence interval, and you can say something with more confidence, right? And, so in real time, the conference, something got presented, next day you have 30,000 insights, you can say something with more confidence. So, well, that is one part. But what did really change? Well, the thing that changed was within the company, I was able to build teams, internal teams, that could produce reports that were very insightful. And these were the reports. And, initially I was writing executive summaries based on all this data. And, you're looking at multiple sources and writing executive summaries. And those reports became highly valuable. And it was being shared across the entire global teams. And this was a small group of people writing a report, internal, whose main job was not to write those reports. They had other things to do, to write those reports within 12 hours. And a lot of professional companies which do these analysis and market intelligence were not able to. They can also write reports, but internal teams got so good. So the summation of the example is understanding the business process, being very, very clear on what you're going to change, figuring out how you can assist technology to give you mechanical arms to assimilate larger quantities of data, getting better confidence interval. But in the end, people don't really care about 300 or 30,000 insights. They care about the impact, the strategic impact, the strategic analysis in the form of very insightful reports. So if your reports are not good, people will not pay much attention. So those are some of the things that, you had mentioned my interest in digital transformation. So the only thing that I'll say is the big learning that I had is digital transformation as it applies to pharma. The digital part is not ours. That is all the Googles and the Apples and all these companies. The transformation part is. What you're trying to transform is not the technology, you're trying to transform people and processes. So that's one example. I have more examples, but it'll take too much time to go into each one of these. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I do agree with the transformation and digital transformation at hand, with pharmaceutical industry moving alongside and advancing at an exponential rate, definitely. So this point actually leads me to my next question, which would be, what emerging trends have you noticed, or do you believe will have the most significant influence on medical strategy within the pharmaceutical industry in the coming years, say around 5 years?
So there's a whole development on there's a whole stream of development that pharma goes through, and pharma is a high transformation industry, right? I mean, contrary to what people think. And what I actually talked about a little bit on the software side, on the marketing side, but if you take core functions, you have research and development, right? So one of the things is, which is kind of more well known, that you had to screen thousands and thousands of molecules and strategies, and then in lab, and then come up with some possible solutions. And now you have with AI, generative AI, and computing capacities, you can simulate a lot of things and kind of build a better bench strength, so that you're not spending so many man hours or woman hours or person hours in doing the basic analysis and then moving some candidates to late stage. So that is a whole area that there is transformation. The other area, then, if you're looking at how you do clinical trials, so this was basically benchtop research, but then you have to study these drugs in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, and things that are changing. So what has changed? In many ways, pharma is trying to keep up with the rest of the society, right? So what has changed? You and I are talking across time zones. I mean, day and night. I mean, it's day here and night there. We're talking across time zones in a real-time fashion. So what has changed is the thing that I would say is geography is now history, right? Geography does not matter, and then time and communication often has become asynchronous. So which means we had to be earlier in a pre-digital technology world, we had to be in the moment, physically present to talk to each other. And the only way you could get around is put something on the notice board, and you're still physically there, but somebody comes and reads it at a later point in time. And all this hasn't happened in the last few years. It has happened since, emails and more realistic communication, all that started happening. So that is what is happening with our society in general. So the question was, okay, let's just take it, apply it to a pharma process. So let's take clinical trials. In clinical trials, you have to follow up with patients. And when you have to follow up with patients, oftentimes it was physically the patient coming in. And of course, if you're doing something which is invasive, you have to have the patient in. But in lots of times, it is just following up and, keeping track and seeing where they are and how they're doing and the endpoints that you are trying to follow. So all that has transformed. And one classic example is in, I think, 2018 or 2019, Apple, of all the companies, did a trial called Apple Heart, which I think recruited about 400,000+ patients in 8 months, in just 8 months. And the Apple Watch was detecting their atrial fibrillation. And I'll not go into the results. It was a pretty impressive result. But the important part was that the watch actually, they coordinated with there was no physical follow-ups required. So it was done through apps, it was done through communication, it was a completely virtual trial. Now, if you think how many man hours or women hours or people hours that companies spend in simply addressing and logistics and people coming in and going back and the time it takes and follow up and loss to follow up, all these things, that can completely be transformed by technology. So there are, what I would say is, one example that initially I'd given you was how insights we are changing. On the other hand, you're looking at how basic science is changing. And then you are looking at, how clinical trials are doing. So you can look at any function of any organization, and I work with pharma, so you look at that. And so as a strategy director, what I look at is, how is this going to change? how should it change? What are the redundant things that we are doing which we don't need to do? And how can we bring technology in? And also there's technology assessment, because you bring the wrong technology in, or your technology hallucinates and gives you wrong information. That's a difference. So you do that eventually. So next 5 years, what's going to happen? 5 years, 10 years, what's going to happen? These generative AI technologies, self-learning technologies will get better. Right now, there's a lot of jokes about, ChatGPT hallucinating, and it's there, but they will get better. They will get better. You build in redundant systems and say, they will get better, which means the part is not about technology getting better. The part is for next 5 years, every pharma company, all of us have to revisit and say, when we have better technology, how are we going to transform each one of our processes? And for that, the biggest challenge is not going to be technology, it's going to be people. People will continue doing it the old way. People will continue. So we have to bring them along and show them that, what you're doing is redundant. Now, the one part that I would say, so what does that mean to people who are trying to make careers? It just means, one question I've been struggling with is, as more and more data and computing capabilities and things will become available, who will benefit? So if you look at the medical stream, who will benefit more? Is it people at the top of the chain, the specialists, and people who have done now, they don't need mid-levels, the physician assistants and nurse practitioners and all that. We're talking about diagnosing, not actual physical procedures. So they will get technology to do it, or will it be the other way around, that some of these people at the top of the chain have spent years gaining knowledge, which might be replaced by great diagnostic tools and ability of these programs to then help people with who don't have to go through the rigor of a major program and years of training, and now they have mechanical arms and they can do things better. So in short, next 5 years, I think what I would suggest, one thing I want to then mention is, this is where I see that it's not like AI is going to take our jobs away. It is a person who knows how to use AI well. And therefore, all the people on the science side, or all the people on, this is what we have to think. It's in companies, people who will start using AI will take the jobs away from people who don't. But given this, they have the same basic, let's just say, science background. So the last part that I'll mention is to exemplify. So look at what happened when my role was medical and it was science-based. But when I started using these social media tools and I could scrub, what happened was there were companies that were providing real-time insights, and we just didn't need them anymore. Now, what those companies should have done is, these were vendor companies, they should have leveraged technology like us and basically got so good at it and then built some other thing. There are lots of companies which, vendors which have 40, 50, 60 PhDs on their panel just to analyze. And now you have AI tools that can do that in real time. So the summation that I would have is, it's not AI that will take the roles of the future in the next 5 years, 10 years. It will be people who can successfully leverage the right AI tools to make real transformation to business processes and make them more efficient.
Definitely, there will be a lot of changes with the AI coming in and AI/ML transformations being easier. But keeping your experience in mind and the peers you have in your company, as well as your colleagues in other companies, you have to keep a bigger perspective, and you have to talk to them again and again, and obviously interact with other members of your team or other companies or vendors of different organizations. So from their interaction interaction? Do you get a lot of insights coming from them, or how has your engagement with professionals, associations influenced your perception on healthcare and your approach to your leadership, as well as teaching the children that you now actually making future pharmacists or future pharmaceutical leaders?
So I think so let's start, we break it down into several things. Number one, the first thing I would tell all future pharmaceutical leaders is your world is going to be very different from mine, right?
Yeah.
When we graduated, we were emails were just getting there, right? And we went through a big change, right? By the time we entered, emails had already come in. So we went through, so the big change, first of all, to think that this is the only change that has happened rapidly now. No, every generation goes through that. In fact, the biggest digital transformation happened when people stopped writing paper memos and completely switched to emails.
Yeah.
Right? So it was a whole way of working and all that. So the part that I would first thing I would reinforce is to say, be in the moment, be pliable in your mind, and be ready to accept change and transform. Don't be rigid. Do not be rigid. Because technology will go where it will go. Our lives will transform the way it will. And you have to now adjust. Be very flexible in adjusting to technology, but be very rigid in what you are trying to achieve. And and then I'll bring my interaction with other leaders in this space as well, is what I've realized is not to compromise on what we are really trying to do, because technology can lead you astray. And to give you examples, there was a next best action project that I was involved with, which was very elegant in its thinking, saying we will incorporate all the message, all the inputs from all the different sources, and we will tell the medical science liaison that what is the next discussion they should have. And so, they can't know everything. So it was very elegant. And what happened was, there was a company that got involved with that. They put things together. One of my colleagues who was on the digital side, he got involved, and they built this. And the idea was that every time a medical science liaison goes and talks to some subject matter expert or key opinion leader, this tool will tell you what else do you want you should be talking to them about. Well, what happened was, in this whole process, what they did not do was to truly benchmark what is the success metric. Like, what are you trying to change? So what happened was, it made the assumption that the MSL lives under a rock, knows nothing, has one conversation, and there's no development since. So the next time they go, it's this algorithm which will tell them, right? And of course, it didn't pan out, because people, they know a lot of things, and, it is like New Year. It's very potent on 31st, and on 1st, 2nd, 3rd. On 3rd, you do not talk about the New Year, right? Or a week later. So I think that dynamism was not built in. I'm not saying that is not going to be built in. It will be built in. But so where do I come from that? The success metrics were not designed. They're not decided, and the rigor that you have to say, okay, this is what we are changing. So several $100,000 later, what happened was, and a year later, what happened was, it was a failure. And the MSL said it doesn't bring any value. So what went wrong? So I don't think the idea was wrong, but what went wrong is to say, look, let's just redefine and say, this is the only thing we are trying to change. So from a strategy point of view, and I'll come to my colleagues as well. From a strategy point of view, I keep it very simple. And I say, look, this is what we are trying to change. Show me, before you initiate this big project and with time and resources and money, show me how it will work on a piece of paper, that it will change that. If you can't convince me now, let's not go ahead with it. It's no different if you do computer programming. I'm not a computer programmer, I've learned enough, is that you have to first make a flow sheet before you start coding. And if you don't have the logic planned out, your code will not work. It may, if you're lucky, will not work. So I think the same logic that we have to apply. Okay, so where are some of my colleagues? The last part of your question, how do I see? This is a lot of discussion that we are having. And part of our jobs is we don't see it that way, right? I mean, this is a different part that you have to do. Mostly my job right now is what is FDA coming back with? What clinical trials do we need to do? So we get caught in the minutiae. The problem is that this is a very unique time when our industry is completely being transformed. And therefore, you have to step back and say some of the things that you're doing is going to be completely redundant. So you have to step back and then say, well, not only, so it's almost like that MSL role. So in this point in time, we have got this technology, we're doing these things, and we say, okay, well, we can change this process, but that process itself has evolved. The MSL themselves learned a lot of new things, and the customers and the conversation had moved on. So you have a dual target, if you will. So you have to project the trajectory. So let me summarize it and start with saying this way, that when when astronauts, they say, okay, well, you have to enter at a certain, or if you're trying to intercept a certain, you are trying to land a probe, NASA is sending something, trying to land a probe on some asteroid. So you can plan everything, but you also have to plan in that time, where will the asteroid move to? Yeah. So you have to make these calculations and adjust for that. So it's not only getting to the asteroid, but so that is how I see in some of, and there is varying level of understanding of a lot of my colleagues in various companies. Some of them are intuitively good, others are not. The one part that I've seen is there are no hybrid roles. So people are either very scientific or they are completely computer science, IT oriented. And sometimes I'll sit in meetings where a person from good IT companies are coming and proposing solutions, which the medical team will sit there and say, that's completely tone deaf. You don't get it. But at the same time, the medical or the pharma companies, they are very set in their ways and they don't want to change. So when you have hybrid roles, people who do both, they have better understanding of both sides, and they are the ones who will lead. They're better equipped to lead change. Or you have, if you don't have hybrid roles, you should have hybrid teams. People who understand each other's point of view, because the truth is going to be somewhere in between. Right? Let me stop there, and hopefully I've answered your question.
Yes, you did. Very substantially, you did. And with all these experiences, talking to your colleagues, cross-functionally talking to other people, and also, as you said, interacting with IT people who are completely tone deaf about the pharmaceutical industry. So there has to be some hybrid knowledge as well, right? So what steps from your side, just from your perspective, what steps are you taking to bridge the gap between the industry? The one part question would be this, and the second would be taking steps to bridge the gap between the industry and academia. As you know, in India, the gap is huge. I am not aware about USA, but in India, the regressive educational system is still the same, hasn't changed at all. And the gap has to be more than in USA. So how do you see alumni networks contributing to professional growth and collaborations?
Yeah, so let me actually just mention something. So I didn't mean to say that always some of these IT teams are tone deaf. I'm just saying there are some situations where they might be, right? But if you think, and let me argue from the IT point of view before I come to steps and industry and academia and education and alumni networks and all those things that you mentioned. So if you look from the IT industry, they're doing a much better job than subject matter expertise from various industries, because they are now getting into our area.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying they're completely off and asking them, you should not even enter there. We are getting to a point where saying you are tone deaf, and they are advancing rapidly, and so it will only be a matter of time before these tools will get so good.
Yeah.
They will truly, they'll stop appearing tone deaf. So they are early on in their career. So one part that I have to say is, this is just a suggestion that I have, is to say, well, you have to appreciate, if you're working for an IT, don't get very blinkered and focused and siloed in your own industry, so that you start telling people who know the business process, know the science, that you start overruling them. So that is important, but they have made significant progress. So which means, we've just taken one part, right? I mean, we've taken pharma industry and we're taking IT, and we're just talking that there are lots of different transformations happening and lots of different interfaces. I feel the majority of scope of development is at the intersection of different streams. Because if you want to look at astronomy and you want to say something about black holes, then you have to learn all that knowledge and then apply and get onto a PhD level where you are saying, well, all these people before you in that area have not thought of. If you want to talk about fluid dynamics and physics and some of those, you have to learn all that to and then find out something. But if you're talking about the intersection between the two, and if you're trying to explain, and I'm making stuff up, it may or may not be true, of how dark matter flows through black holes, then now you've combined two things, and you may be able to find something at that intersection which has not been thought about. So where am I going with? So if you look at traditional pharma industry, and you look at all these newer computing tools, and now you'll have I don't know how many years, you'll have quantum computing, which will greatly enhance your ability to compute. That means if you are now for that, first of all, I talked about how existing professionals, have to now think ahead and say, it took a lot of time for me to compute, but it can quickly be done. So it can quickly be done. It can be done now, but it can quickly be done in the future. What is it that we move up the chain? How can we figure out some things, assuming that time and resources that was spent will not take that much time. So that is one. The other part then, this is within a short 10 year phase where people like us are already working. Number two, let's take it down to school level. So I'll go back to BIT Mesra as well. Actually, I love the fact that I did pharmacy in what was traditionally an engineering school.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I am friends with all these people who have progressed in their career, and some of them are working with my industry. So I did not interact with them as much in BIT as I do now. And we are part of the same groups, and part of these conversations that's why I have such higher level understanding of all these large language models and what is the impact as they are coming, because I can freely, bounce off things and they bounce off things. And sometimes I find myself correcting when someone creates vaccine hesitancy and all that, then I have to correct and say, well, this is pure garbage. So what we're doing is, in a way, we are interacting. And we are sharing information, and we are going back and forth, and some projects come out of it as well. So take it back to the school. In the school itself, these schools have to learn, and that's one difference. When you talked about India as well, that's one difference. No, the Indian system is very rigorous, but what the Indian system, I feel, and this is just my perspective, and the different schools have different ways of dealing with it. What I feel is a lot of schools could do better by defining the success metric and saying, look, you're doing all this, what is the change that is going to happen? And that's what you will see, that entrepreneurship mentality, why you see a lot of schools here, people drop off, and all the famous cases of people dropping off and creating some real change. So the part that I would take back is, number one, the academe, the faculty, myself included, have to say, okay, well, we did all this. How are we going to change these young minds, putting things together, projects? How are we going to change? And what is it going to change in a not just change here and now, but where it might be? Like, think of that asteroid, right? It'll be, so that is where we have to think. How do we develop these people, open up their minds? How can we collaborate with different streams, especially IT? It's easy to work with IT. Remember, the people in IT, it also helps them. Because if you are on a computer science and you are exposed to something and you're making these basic things and you don't know the difference between an antacid and a PPI, when they work with a pharmacy student, they will quickly correct it. So you're picking up those skills at that level.
Yeah.
And the question then would be that why I feel compelled to be there is to say we're not creating these projects and we're not putting these people together and creating a fake challenge which really doesn't exist or will not exist. I am actually giving them a real challenge and saying, look, this is a real situation. These are real case studies. And this is what we have to solve for. And some students can come up with brilliant ideas, right? So at academic level, my suggestion would be to think cross-collaboratively, to be true subject matter of your area because the other side depends on it, to have a mix of academia and people from the industry working collaboratively, or anyone who can identify and give you a real problem to solve and work with you. And the other part is encouraging creativity and giving students the ability to fail, because, and say, well, or try different times, but to say in the end, the only thing I would hold the entire academia and students and everyone accountable for is, in the end, after spending, just like the example that I gave you, the next best action, after spending 4 years or thousands of dollars or rupees, what change did you make to the real problems? Not this academic thing, what change did you make? And that's what we have to, and then to make those changes, which means, what are some things that these students could not do? For instance, the reason why I think the way I think is because I took up 2 programming courses, which I don't code, but I learned one big thing, that you have to draw a flow sheet, a flow diagram, and a logic. If you can get that, and that has helped me all my life. So I picked up what is essentially a coding skill. So, and similarly, for people in the IT side, or let's just say, I'll take BIT as an example. I mean, there are other schools and may or may not be at different stages. What can they learn and appreciate about the industry they're trying to transform without some people trying to appear tone deaf or telling them this is how you should do it, and saying, no, that's not how I should do it. So it is better appreciate. So I'll stop there, and hopefully it kind of covered all the various topics that you had mentioned.
Yes, it did. It actually covered all the questions and also some of my doubts that I had. Such great ideas coming from you. You have answers for a lot of questions that people might still be figuring out, and you have given on the spot ideas to so many people. That's an amazing work. I guess this is actually the work from experience and being at your place. Thank you so much, Raweesh sir, for sharing your valuable insights with us. Your perspective on digital transformation, especially, and its role in shaping the future of healthcare has been truly inspiring. As we navigate the digital era, it's thought leaders like you who help pave the way for meaningful change in the clinical practice and patient care. So thank you so much for being here in the podcast.
Well, thank you. And the only thing then I'll say is, these are two things. Number one, I've really not shaped anything. I just like to think that I've kind of, spent more time trying to understand the change. And as I applied some things, there are lots of mistakes. These things that I said, digital transformation, it came to me over a period of time, right? So there will be more maturity as we get along. And for me, it has been. I'm personally very excited to live at this juncture. In 10, 15, 20 years, things won't change as much at this pace of transformation. So for all of us at this juncture, when it's almost like 1900 when there was industrial revolution going on, right? And things were changing rapidly. So to be living in these exciting times, I hope my last message would be, if I can't impart, and some of the students and early career people, if I can't impart anything, I'd say just step back and marvel at the amazing era that we have right now of the transforming and everything transforming, and then go from there to figure out things that really excite you. It will excite you. It will not be a job. It will be things that you're trying to solve, and that part. So hopefully that is my final message, and thank you for having me on this podcast. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.